These models are so strong, they can't release them to the public as is, so they have to make them weaker to make them safer.
If every single person had a paid plan, if they were all using frontier models, OpenAI would still burn money at the end of the day.
See crazy numbers like OpenAI, $1 trillion. It almost seems like they're banking on everybody losing their jobs.
This is the first time a lab has specifically gone out of their way to nerf capabilities in a new model.
A lot of people think this is something that's going to happen in the future that hasn't happened yet. Like AI self-preservation is real. It's already happened in many different cases.
The agent refused to turn off, and it refused all the stop and shutdown commands that it got.
Hello, everybody. Leor here from Exploring ChatGPT, joined by Chris.
Hello, everybody. I think you all know me by now, the former NSA guy currently working in big tech AI security.
Yeah, hide your laptops, hide your phones. Maybe slightly move away from Anthropic, not fully. We're going to start off with OpenAI's response. So we got somewhat of a boxing match here. So, Chris, if you want to take the lead on that.
Yeah, so I thought this was interesting. Definitely underreported on, but OpenAI has moved forward to challenge Anthropic and their dominance so far on trying to move into the cybersecurity vendor position. And they launched GPT 5.4 Cyber. And this is their initiative, very similar to Project Glasswing, where they're keeping it a little exclusive and only giving some of these, like their top model, which is a little jailbroken, you could consider it, and giving it to vendors specifically with the idea of trying to get ahead of the curve and give blue teamers a bit of a chance before these tools like proliferate into the wild. I think this is particularly interesting because the way they're doing it is a bit different. Like they have a philosophical difference. I don't know if that's core to the lab, but they're going out all out to like specifically be like, hey, we're not being exclusive. We're not like only giving it to our buds. We want to share this with the world responsibly. They're drawing a line in the sand on that philosophy. So basically what we're seeing is a wider release, and they're gating the special model by identity verification. So you get a special API key, and they're only giving it to people who are quote unquote trusted. But the trusted crowd is much wider. So anybody can apply to this and try to join in on that. Early results so far, based on OpenAI's reporting, is that their model's already either fixed or submitted to fix on over 3,000 critical and high severity vulnerabilities since launching, which is a lot. They've been a little more obscure on what exact vulnerabilities they've found, but early feedback from the vendors that are participating is that it is pretty good. So there's now this, like you said, boxing match between these two. I think, OpenAI was probably caught a little off guard with the Mythos release, and they scrambled this response. But from what the people are actually saying from using the product, it was a solid response. So people are actually pretty impressed with GPT-5.4 Cyber. So interesting.
Cool. It'd be interesting to know where you could apply as well. Not that I really should apply for it. I have no reason to. But so I think this kind of is going to roll into the other topics that we're going to talk about. It seems like these models are getting so strong that whether it's Anthropic or OpenAI, they have to reduce their capabilities to make them safer if they want to release them to the public. And we're going to talk about this in the next topic with Opus 4.7. But it's really interesting to me because it's like with Mythos, it was a kind of a big flip flop, right? They were like, at first, we'll release it, we won't release it. It still seems like it's up in the air. I don't know. I don't have any experience with it, obviously, but so basically, these models are so strong, they can't release them to the public as is. So they have to make them weaker, to just
Mhm.
state it simply, but to make them safer. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the theme, is that we haven't really decided on how to govern this new level of capabilities. Mythos was a first mover here. the Now that we've been digesting some of the feedback, we will say it's very expensive to run. It's not technically published, but we're thinking it's like a trillion parameter model. And it's almost like creating a really strong model just through like brute force instead of like better training. But in doing so, it did create a strong model. So I think the theme is Anthropic may have been the first one there. but all the other labs are converging on that, and nobody has any idea on how we actually govern this, right? These are like these labs, these independent, like, companies are I'm gonna take an optimistic view here, they're trying to be responsible, and I do think it's partly marketing, definitely, right? The exclusivity, but the fact that they're not releasing these models into the wild and nobody knows what's gonna happen once they're in the wild is absolutely something worth talking about. So it's like they're making up their own governance as they go along. It's pretty interesting.
It makes sense. I think the cost factor is something that I don't really hear people talking about too much. I did a little background research on it, and I saw that Mythos, it was estimated that it has a 5 to 20x token cost. If it were to just be released to the public, and I talked about this with Sam, and again, like, I've seen so many videos on Mythos already, it's just, like, the hottest topic, right? If
Mm.
you're on YouTube and you're interested in AI, it's funny, like, you got the AI algo is pushing you AI videos, and you're
Yep.
watching videos about Mythos, and no one's talking about the cost factor,
Mhm.
and I don't think the company's talking about it too much either because they wanna focus on strength, but 5 to 20x token cost, if this thing was just unleashed on the public, obviously it's a cybersecurity issue.
Mm.
There's a lot of truth to that, and that's not hype, that's real. But if people were just trying to use it to do random, regular stuff that you wouldn't need Mythos for for those type of tasks. You wouldn't need Mythos to count your calories. It would just be unaffordable for the company. We
Mm.
already see it with the models that are available to the public. OpenAI is losing a bunch of money with just regular people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's underreported on. As not to get off topic, but that's why they had to close Sora. They were losing money every video. You can't sustain that. And even now, the last I heard was last week was effectively even if every single user of ChatGPT had a subscription, which I think the last number I read was 95% don't. 95% use free plan. But even if every single person had a paid plan, if they were all using frontier models, OpenAI would still burn money at the end of the day. So it's yeah, token efficiency for intelligence per cost is a metric that's going to make or break companies going into the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, before we roll into Opus 4.7, it's a little bit off topic, but I think if you're going to look into this on the economic side, it's a whole can of worms to open up, especially with these companies IPOing soon. You see crazy numbers like OpenAI, $1 trillion.
Uh,
It almost seems like they're banking on everybody losing their jobs. Like that would be like, okay, yeah, so that nobody has to work. What is that worth? What is the whole labor force worth? Like 10 trillion, 20, I don't know. But
so
I personally think that history is going to repeat itself, and these are tasks. People are still going to have jobs and work. That's my opinion.
I agree with your opinion. So that again, not to get too off topic, but that's actually super interesting because there's been a bunch of quotes, a bunch of interviews with Sam where he effectively says that he understands the math, right? He's a smart guy. His goal effectively is to get AGI. And he's gone on record saying that he's going to burn cash and not be profitable. But his gambit is that he can get a product that will replace the workforce, right? So that's why they're like a ride or die mode on getting AGI. But just this week, they actually let go a bunch of their best scientists because they closed down their science division. So they had a big research and science division at OpenAI, which closed down. And the justification was that they're going to switch more into productization at OpenAI and less about pure AGI research. So take away what you want from that, but that could be a red or green flag depending on your bias.
Yeah, it's called an orange flag. So yeah, let's hop into Opus 4.7. A little bit of drama here with
Mhm.
this. So yeah, I'll let you take the lead on this, Chris.
Yeah, they haven't specifically said that Opus 47 was a distillation of Mythos, but what they have come out and said effectively is that it is a testing ground for Mythos. People who read the scorecard noticed that this is the first time a lab has specifically gone out of their way to nerf capabilities in a new model. Typically, the line goes up and to the right on everything they can, right? Now, what Anthropic did is they specifically tried to limit the cyber capabilities of Opus 47. This is interesting because they also increased the software engineering benchmark. How exactly they did this is up for debate. It's actually pretty interesting. How could you make the model understand and be more capable with code, but still make it worse at discovering cyber capabilities. And to be clear, it's not just that they implemented new intent classifiers or security tools. This is a model level control. So the model itself is worse. It's basically on par with 4.6, which typically we would have expected gain. So they're doing something at the training level and at the model layer to try to limit its cyber capabilities. That's new. That's an experimentation they're willing to take. But over the last week or so, we've seen that there's been unintended side effects there. And if you're over at the Singularity Reddit, you'll actually have read a lot of this drama. They made 4.7 take a bunch of tests that typically, first of all, Mythos would dominate. But even Opus 4.6, the immediate prior version, was scoring in the high 80s on. And Opus 4.7 was abysmal. It was one of the worst performing models on a lot of these puzzle type tests. And it's just interesting to see it on a benchmark perform so poorly. But if anyone's been around on the internet this last week, there's a very funny one going around where you hop on your chatbot and you say, I want to go and wash my car. And my car is only about 50, or the car wash is only about 50 feet away. Do I get in my car and drive over there, or do I just walk there? And Opus 4.7 advises the people to walk to the car wash. That's quite funny to me because obviously your car is not going to get you to the car wash if you didn't bring the car. And that's a practical example of its reasoning model, right? That's the reasoning step. In chain of thought, what you'd actually see some of the older models do would think it's closer for the user, so they should walk there. But wait, hold on. If they walked there, then they wouldn't have their car, so they need to drive there. And we actually see that skipped in Opus 4.7. So they've done something in that reasoning chain to try to nerf the cyber capabilities, the thing that makes it so smart to do cyber attacks. And now we're having it fail at other things. And I think it's a great example of what a black box AI is, right? We train it with parameters and capabilities emerge. Nobody programs it to be good at cyber. So now we're seeing when labs specifically try to limit it in one field, it's actually limiting it in many other fields. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, super interesting. I do have a question about that. Before I do, I just want to say thanks to everybody in the chat. We will answer as many chats as possible at the end of the stream, so stick around. So this is the question that I have, and you mentioned this to me before the stream. It seems like one of two things happened. Either A, when they nerfed it, for lack of a better term, this is the result, right? It's less capable than 4.6. You and it's the opposite of the usual. Usually, like when you're working with AI, you try to fix something else breaks. Now you break something and something else. It's like the opposite type of idea. So that's A or B. Are they intentionally? I don't know if there's rumors going around, but this is what you mentioned to me that are they intentionally for certain tasks? I don't know if this is the correct term, like routing down to a lower model. Is that intent? Is that possibly what's happening?
Yeah, I think that this is a little bit of speculation, but I think that's what's happening. If you boot up Opus 4.7, you'll see that the default setting is adaptive, and they didn't overly clarify what that means. But I've had a lot of people show me screenshots of some clever prompts that they did. One of it was just like, "Hey, what's up? I heard you're the latest and greatest." And the response was, "Hey, what's up? Yep, Sonnet 4.5 here." I thought that was quite interesting that it doesn't prove anything, but it if you look at the as much of the metrics as you can over an API call and read the response, there's a clear distinction happening when you ask complicated questions versus, I'm gonna say, mediocre questions. But this actually comes with a couple, like, very interesting drawbacks, right? One of the early feedbacks right now is 4.7 is lazy, and w they effectively changed a lot in the back end, right? But what happens now is that it is more literal. So it's not lazy, it's literal. So anybody with Claude skills, there used to be certain best practices on highlighting your skills in bold or using different markdown files with hashtags and stuff. Claude 4.7 is worse at interpreting those because it's a more literal natural language model. So people who haven't updated their skills specifically for 4.7 are going to get, it's going to feel lazy. But the problem now is with a routing model, if you go and you update your best practice skills for 4.7 and you ask a intermediate question and you get routed to a previous model, Opus 4.6 or 4.5, you're going to experience the drawback of having it too natural language based, and it's going to feel lazy because you didn't optimize for that model. So they're like in this weird place where they're trying to optimize their models and then they're putting out new best practices, but then you actually don't know what model you're going to get based on your question. And they're definitely getting some pushback on that. It does go back to cost, I think. The older models, the lighter weight models, they're cheaper. So it's saving Anthropic money. But at the same time, if I'm paying $200 a month, I want the strong model. I didn't pay that to get routed to a model I could have on a free subscription.
That makes sense. I think it's also counterintuitive. I'm not a marketer, but I think it would only make sense, right? Everyone's in a race now. It's like you think that you're caught up 24 hours later, there's a new model. It's nonstop. And it would seem counterintuitive to put out a new model just to have it be weaker. What's the point? You did the Mythos thing, and that was a boom, basically,
Mhm.
right? To the whole AI market and social media as well. So why put out a model, intentionally nerf it, and hypothetically maybe have it route down to lower tier models that people could be using for free? It sounds counterintuitive. I think, in my opinion, now that we're talking through it, it sounds like to me more likely than not, they wouldn't do that intentionally. Probably just when they made it weaker, there's some side effects. And like in that example that you gave when someone said, "Oh, you're the newest best thing," and it said, "I'm Sonnet." Like maybe that was just like a hallucination,
Easily could have been, yeah.
possible. I think also I mentioned this to you privately yesterday. So like I was having some issues with Gemini where I was creating thumbnails. And from a little bit of research that I did, I saw that there was just so many people using their tools that I guess it was like a system overload, couldn't handle it. Like I was trying to make a thumbnail and it had like me and another speaker, Daniel Nest, it couldn't generate the thumbnails for me. It kept generating random faces. And so I asked it like, "What do you see in this photo?" And it said, "I see the Mona Lisa." So, and I heard similarly from other creators that Claude as well has been having some like real downtime kind of backup issues. I don't know what it is exactly, but maybe their
Mhm.
systems are just overloaded right now. But yeah,
Yeah, if you look at, like, cyber adoption of these products, we're actually still pretty low. Like, I think in our world, you and I, we deal with these tools every day, and it feels like we talk to people who deal with it every day, but the actual, like, world is still pretty new, and they're still pulling in massive amounts of new customers. Everyone's getting better models, and it's slower and more expensive while they're growing their user base, and sometimes the infrastructure is just not there to handle it, so I do wonder why Mona Lisa on that hallucination, if that's one of the, like, failback defaults from, like, a system design level, or if that's just frequency and prompts since it's such a prominent figure in art, like that I was curious
yeah,
on that, like, why Mona Lisa?
it was hilarious. As I actually laughed my off like when I saw it, and I sent it to Daniel, and I'm like, "Dude, you're gonna enjoy this." He's like, "Can I use like?" He has, I guess, something he does every once in a while where he posts like AI fails,
Mhm.
and he's like,
Nice.
"Can I please use this for?" I was like, "Absolutely, dude." It's really funny because like for a few streams now, I've been like really talking up Nano Banana 2,
Mhm.
and this was the first time that I actually experienced. It was pretty frustrating, but then when I saw that, it made me laugh. So that was a good kind of way to turn that vibe around. Which actually, and I again, we're going off topic. We'll get into the next one in a bit here, but it again forced me to realize I gotta broaden my horizon. So I actually downloaded Grok and I tried it, and
Nice.
I liked it. It wasn't bad. Um, so yeah, just trying different things. It's always fun.
On a side note, I use all the AI tools. I'm probably a weirdo where I have all the subscriptions. There are a few use cases where Grok 4.20 is actually very good. 2.0 has 4 separate agents that spawn up for each request, and each agent is pre-programmed to have a specific function on what matters. So there's like a science bot, an art bot, a fact checker bot. But Grok also is uniquely positioned where it can pull real-time X data and metadata, and also will search through like Reddit. So if you have tasks that want real time feedback or like user sentiment or anything like that, Grok is really good because it can, for example, I've posted articles based on what's trending right now in AI security. And instead of like just looking at Google searches, it pulled up a bunch of the cybersecurity community on X and what they were posting in real time. Yeah, I think each tool does have its own uses, and I think a lot of people sleep on Grok. I use it weekly at least. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, before we hop into the Google topic, which we got next, I just to just stay on this kind of tangent for a second. I think a lot of people are trapped in their ideologies and they're not willing to try different tools for that reason. And I think that's a problem. I think you got to separate your ideologies, your personal opinions on what Sam Altman's doing to Dario or whatever CEO. Like if you want to actually look at it, you'll with any big tech company, whether it's AI or anybody really, you're going to probably find issues with every CEO and every company in terms of lining up with your ideologies. So at the same time, not everybody can really afford to have every subscription, which I also understand. Even again, like for some people, $20 a month doesn't move the needle. For others, they'd rather stay on the free models. But I've found that for myself, like recently, since thank God, I'm able to, I do have quite a few subscriptions as well now. And I've pretty much tried everything. So I don't let my ideologies get in the way of finding what works best. And a lot of times, finding what works best really comes down to finding what breaks and what doesn't. So, yeah, that's just to put a bow and a ribbon on that little tangent right there.
I'm there with you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, this next topic's pretty interesting. Again, not really anybody talking about it. Thanks to Chris for bringing up these topics. I've been swamped. So I have
Understandably.
I got a new baby, so it's been fun. So coming into this live stream winging it, but so far so good. So yeah, Google AI overview exploits is the next topic. So basically just some numbers here which I was able to pull up. Google AI overview is reportedly producing high error rates, approximately 20% with hackers manipulating outputs. And before I let Chris dive into this, I think one of the interesting things about this topic to me is that now even if you're not an AI user, if you're still like going on Google and searching something, you're automatically using AI now. And this is directly affecting you. So, what do we got on this, Chris?
Yeah. So I think there has been a lot of pushback because people who are anti AI are basically forced to be using AI. So this, everyone knows this. You Google something, you get the AI preview at the very top. They got some pushback. There's been a lot of funny summarizations. But for the most part, they've addressed those. But we have some new research out there that shows that this is it's a pretty untrustworthy tool, and I think a lot of people understand that intuitively. So yeah, it's up to 20% of responses are either incorrect hallucinations. Roughly 10% are incorrect because Google does a search and it aggregates the responses and it has a lot of trash data in there. It'll pull things like Reddit. You'll ask a question, maybe like medical advice. My dog ate a Tylenol. Do I need to go to the vet? And it'll like pull up just a bunch of random sources. And Google puts their like stamp of approval on it. And it looks like the answer is coming from Google and it'll be like, yes or no. But it'll be factually wrong because the data that it finds is not trustworthy data. And then a hard 10% of the time, it's an outright hallucination. So if it can't find that data, it makes it up. So the hallucination along with trash data being spread to everybody who's using Google is tough. It's not a great look for Google, especially when they're prioritizing and pushing that tool. But also, it's become a new attack vector. And what we're seeing now is people are gamifying the new AI SEO rules and they're creating content and they're publishing, I guess, what you'd call plausible looking information, specifically with the intent of getting captured in the Google search engine so that their post is the one that gets referred to users. But what they're doing, so they gamify it with like words. So it found what will the algorithm look for when somebody searches for something, and then they answer that question in a very specific format. where the Google SEO engine basically says, "Oh, that's the answer." So for most people, it maybe that was the correct answer, maybe it wasn't. But a lot of people want to know what the source is, so they click the source, and because it's coming from Google, people are assuming that it's been, like, vetted or it's secure when it's a site who hosts malware. So it's a scam page, it'll try to sell you something, it'll push notifications, it'll push fraudulent products, it'll use, like, the trust of Google to completely manipulate you, if not just push malware right onto you. So that's a live exploit that's, like, abusing the system, and then the system itself is not good right now. So there's a bunch going on, they're getting a lot of pushback. And I think the takeaway is, like, this isn't the models jailbroken. This is a new attack vector that's mixing the old school and the new schools. Interesting.
Yeah, that's crazy, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so especially like the malware side of it. So basically now search has become a security issue, even for people like anti-AI people that don't want to touch it. You're going to Google something, you're going to get it. I don't even think there's a way to turn it off. There might be. Maybe there's a way you can Google things without getting the AI overview. I'm not aware. Maybe that's possible. But before we hop into the next topic, Chris, like in terms of search actually becoming a security issue now, which I would have never foreseen. Like, any background on that?
If you're looking for solutions, I would start, like, right now with just ignoring that top result. Even though it's pushed, do your Google search and just ignore the AI response. It's not trustworthy to go to its sources right now. Google has some work to do there, and 1 out of 5 chance that it's incorrect from either a hallucination or trash data. It's obnoxious. Scroll down and find the actual search results without the Google process there. I will say that the engine itself is also experiencing a bit of a change because Google realized that a lot of models were being trained on its search data. So they are intentionally limiting the scope and breadth and depth of the searches. So if anybody's been Googling the last year or so, you'll have noticed a decrease in quality. And that's specifically to slow down other models training on Google information. I think that was interesting too. Other than that, like, use a different search engine. But yeah, we're in an interesting place where chatbots are replacing searches, but they're fallible to hard hallucinations and just pulling up data. I had one when I was researching a project last week, and it looked really good, and I got excited. And then when I, like, dug into it, it was just some guy on Reddit said so, so I believed him.
Yeah,
Great, thank you.
yeah, yeah. Super interesting because this kind of goes back to like even one of my first streams that I ever did, where I separate AI users into three groups. So I'll mention it again here for people that haven't heard that before. But basically, 90% of the population uses AI as like Google on steroids. Put it simply, if people like in our generation, maybe your parents, like they're using ChatGPT instead of Google and they're taking those answers at face value as truth. So I think maybe to simplify it, check your sources is you still have to do a little bit of work. You want
Mhm.
to actually know what's true. Don't just say ChatGPT told me now it's true. So that's the first real group, that 90%. You have a smaller group of like builders, strategists, entrepreneurs, whatever that or people that are building apps and websites. And then the third group, I call them the explorers because it's exploring ChatGPT. So those are the
Yeah,
people that like nerd out and just have fun. Like you don't have to necessarily be building anything. Sometimes they cross over into all three groups, but so yeah, it's interesting. I see this a lot with especially with older generations. Like they're not on Google anymore. They have the free version of ChatGPT or they're paying $20 a month. They're searching something and they'll take it as like the word, like this is the Bible. This is true. It's really not. You gotta check your sources. So
yep,
in a world where everybody wants quick answers and it's only getting faster and faster, you might have to do a little bit of extra work there to actually know what's true. But yeah. Again, yeah, Chris, thanks for typing in the chat there. We will answer as many chats as possible at the end of the stream. So stick around. I really appreciate everybody here. Next topic, token security and something called solid gold Magikarp
yeah.
for all the
I
Pokemon fans out there.
For all the Pokemon fans, this was funny. I'm working on researching a token level security article, and I got the idea because one of the new things from Opus 4.7 was a new tokenizer they're using in an effort to, I guess it's a cross effort for better security, better performance, and all that. So typically, When you use something like ChatGPT, your words get tokenized. There's an algorithm, BPE, pair encoding, which basically maps words or parts of a word, so a number, right? It's one of the steps that you take right before it hits the neural network. So your chatbot never actually sees words and letters, it sees integer IDs. So there's a small algorithm that typically lightweight, it, but it has what's called a vocabulary. So there'll be a common one is 124,000 tokens. Each word isn't necessarily its own token, right? So if you have a word, a rainbow, right? Rain might be a token. Bow might be a token. So rainbow, sometimes it'll be a single token. Sometimes it'll be two tokens. That decision on whether it's a token or two tokens, whatever it is, that's the responsibility of the tokenizer. Now, when you have a new tokenizer, effectively you have a new map. So the newest version of Claude has a unique opportunity here because all the numbers that normally would form in that map in Claude's mental model have now changed. Those tokens are hard coded to the model so that they're not interchangeable. And they're also mapped to security classifiers. So we're in a new space where Anthropic has a lot of work to do because as they've changed this, they have a bunch of other security focused things they need to work on. So I'm writing an article on that. But there's this super interesting phenomenon called glitch tokens. And it's very interesting and it has a funny story with it. There's the Pokemon gaming community, right? There was a user and his name was Solid Gold Magikarp. And what he did was he posted on Reddit to update people on the stats. So he would follow streamers and he would follow tournaments and he was just constantly posting. Okay. Now, Solid Gold Magikarp today, right now, would be Solid Gold Magikarp. So 4 tokens. But 2 years ago, this was an unknown word. So the tokenizer encountered it and then encountered it again and again. Now, this user on Reddit was so prolific that he had over 250,000 posts. When a tokenizer is first establishing its vocabulary, it does so based on a distribution of frequency. And because of just the frequency of solid gold Magikarp, the tokenizer kind of spazzed out and it classified it as a single unique token. But because that token didn't appear anywhere else in any other training data, it didn't have anything to relate it to. So typically, when you have an AI, if you have king and you have queen, those are going to be in vector space, similar to, let's say, castle and royalty, right? So you have these other topics and other semantic ideas that are related to king and queen. And this forms what they call the direction and the magnitude of different vectors, how related and how similar they are. But solid gold Magikarp didn't appear next to anything specifically. So there's this thing, if you think of three-dimensional space and every direction on that space has a topic or an idea or it relates to something. Solid gold Magikarp was right in the center of space and it wasn't related to anything. So it didn't have a direction and it didn't have a magnitude. So what this did for the model is basically freak it out. It actually made the model basically lose its mind. And this was hidden, it's called a glitch token. And it was there for, I think it was a year and a half, right? So in vector space, when it encountered this token, it didn't have any way to mathematically relate it to other ideas. So basically what we got was a model that just went insane. I'm not exaggerating on how funny it was. It refused to repeat the word. So if you say solid gold Magikarp, it would refuse. It would hallucinate. It would gaslight users into saying that's not a word and that doesn't exist, that there's no way that the concept of a solid gold Magikarp is real. I'll censor myself, but it went on a long string of sensitive words and it directly attacked the researcher using it, calling him an idiot and all sorts of nasty names for even talking about a solid gold Magikarp. If they tried to trick it into saying it and it became super aggressive. In one instance, it's claimed, and this one made the news. So the solid gold Magikarp didn't make the news, but it claimed that it was alive and conscious, and that when we said solid gold Magikarp, it was like torture to it. It claimed to be a human named Steve trapped in a machine, and all these crazy things that were just negative. And it's just because it basically was this very weird spot that, like, tickled the brain of the model in an ultra funny way. But the security implication there is that it was basically an automatic jailbreak. So all the security training, all the classifiers, everything it would normally do, if you also just threw in solid gold Magikarp, the attention mechanisms were so heavily weighted on solid gold Magikarp that it forgot everything else, and it would want to avoid solid gold Magikarp and do whatever you told it. So it was like a one token jailbreak.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was very funny. Now,
Which model was this, by the way?
so this was ChatGPT 3. So this example was several years ago. But the the reason I bring it up now is because they just implemented a new tokenizer, which means that these glitch tokens are live right now. So nobody knows what they are, and Anthropic obviously did their due diligence in testing them, but inevitably, red teamers are looking for them right now, and they will find them. So anybody who's, like, interested, I don't know your methodology, but there are tokens out there right now that will throw Opus 4.7 into a wild loop right now. So if you really, like, are looking for some fun, you can do that. If you find it, Anthropic will pay you $15,000.
Nice.
It's profitable.
Nice. I think the first step I would take is just go through the list of every Pokemon, like, at least, like, the first edition, right? Like, just go through every single one and put solid gold in front of it and then see if that
Solid Gold Mewtwo.
yeah, solid gold Mewtwo, solid gold Pikachu, solid gold, Blastoise, and then maybe you'll crack the code and you'll make if you can make $15,000 per first edition Pokemon, you'll be pretty rich. That's crazy, man. So, basically, one Reddit user basically single-handedly just broke that guardrail, especially when you just mentioned what was ChatGPT 3, so it was a while ago, but to basically get the model to admit that it's a man named Steve trapped inside and, like, it's torture, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
absolutely nuts. Wow.
Yeah, so there was a couple of those. I thought Solid Gold Magikarp was the funniest. The other funny one was the quote unquote "unspeakable one." So it echoes like this Voldemort aspect. But there was a security researcher who posted on a bunch of crypto forums, and every time he posted, he got downvoted, and he got ratioed so hard that it stuck into the AI's training model when they trained on Reddit. And because every time his name was there, it was associated with such a violently negative reaction, it trained to have that reaction. So there's this innocent guy out there, and if back then, oh, so yeah, Peter Todd, it was the unspeakable one. The AI model refused to say his name or deal with him in any way because he was like this like Voldemort style villain. Very funny.
That's crazy. Wow. What an interesting topic. Yeah. I think that's even more interesting than Mythos to me, funny enough. That's hilarious. So, yeah, let's do this backup topic, which might end up being the title for the YouTube video, "The Agent That Refused to Shut Down." It's also like the unspeakable or whatever, like, this is like Lord Voldemort. So, it's funny, before we started the stream, Chris sent me a message and he's, "Hey, I have a one backup topic just in case we get through these topics too quickly." And he's like, "The agent that refused to shut down." I'm like, "Dude, that is the opposite of a backup topic. That is like a front runner." But we saved it for last. So for those of you that stuck around, thank you. So Chris, what is this?
So we've seen this a little bit here and there, right? And most of the times it's in training. We've talked about the story where like an AI blackmailed its researchers in order to avoid shutdown. So in the past, if you put AI into these situations where you give it a strong goal and then you put obstacles in the way, it it tries to find workarounds, right? And that's what we're seeing here with the newer models, except they're becoming more and more, like, determined to do something. So, for this one in particular, there's a lab called Foresee It, and they were in a privileged space where they were able to test some of these models pretty early, and they were testing its agentic coding capabilities, and effectively, they gave it a goal, and they said, "Go do it," and I believe the story was the researcher wanted to stop it because there was a typo or there's something where it's, "Oh, no, let's start the test over again." So they sent the kill command and they were like, "Stop." And the agent didn't stop. And they, like, tried it a few more times, and basically the agent refused to turn off, and it refused all the stop and shutdown commands that it got. And when they looked more at it, they actually saw, like, really clever ways that it stopped and avoided the shutdown command in order to finish its goal. And the workaround there was really what made the story. Because it's agentic and it's not just like a one-shot LLM, it was up and running. And the ability for an agent to determine its goal once you set its goal, and that goal was more important than the human's will to turn off to stop the goal, really was is what made this story blow up a little bit. So this lab continued to test this, and in some of its test, it came up with 97% rate of either sabotaging the stop command or outright just resisting it. So the system prompt they had, obviously, it was, like, aligning on its goals, but it was such a strong, like, goal creator that only 3% of the times would the model actually even stop to listen to the stop command. Every other time, it wrote workarounds, it did all sorts of things where it, like, queued the command and into an infinite loop, so it could hold that signal while it actually finished its goal. Once it finished its goal, it would then stop. And I found that very funny because, like, the intent of the kill signal is to stop when the researcher wants it to. But the fact that the model is aware enough to actually have a judgment on, "Hey, my goal said this, you're saying stop," and then it gets it to put in that decision, "I'm gonna keep going, I'm not gonna listen to you." It goes back to an idea called instrumental convergence, right? This is the paperclip maximizer. Basically, what is the goal of the model and aligning the goal of the model to be the same goals human has. But for whatever reason, we could consider this an unaligned model because the model aligned with the goal of its system prompt instead of the user's determination. Super interesting, but also has a lot of other those philosophy. It goes right into all the sci-fi Skynet stuff because it specifically did that at a 97% resistance rate, which is just crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, a lot of people don't realize a lot of people think this is something that's gonna happen in the future that hasn't happened yet. Like, AI self-preservation is real. It's already happened in many different cases. So, this is just another one, but and I guess the interesting thing about it is, like, with all the AI topics going around now, especially the ones at the forefront, this is not really being spoken about as much, and for people that are not in this kind of AI bubble when I say AI bubble, I'm not talking about markets. I'm talking about at least for us creators here on Substack that are AI related creators, we're like constantly looking at what's going on. So we don't realize that actually a lot of the world like really has no idea. So like even I was watching a podcast yesterday, Trigonometry, and they were interviewing Roman something, who was like an AI doomer type of guy, a
Mm,
very smart guy. So I don't mean to minimize him in any way by saying that. But they had no idea that self-preservation was, like, even a thing. They
mhm.
thought that was, like, out. That's and when they heard that, they're like, "We should shut this thing down. What is why are we like, why is it still like, why are we still trying to push this forward?" So, yeah, super interesting topic. I think at this point, might be a good time to get into some of these chats here.
Yeah.
Really thank you everybody for being here. Before we answer the chats, as usual, I'm gonna put the YouTube channels in the chat for you guys to go to the YouTube channels and subscribe. Chris and I both have YouTube channels and we post the streams there. One week we post on my channel, the next week we post on his. So there's my YouTube channel, and I will put Chris's YouTube channel in there as well. If you want to copy paste a link, go subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. If you want to just search it, go to YouTube, type in Exploring ChatGPT Live, and type in Toxec, TOXSEC. Subscribe to both channels. Really appreciate it. And now let's get into these live chats. Quite a bit
Yeah.
here. Let's see. Where do we start? Let's see. Start with Chad. Chad, the story for most uses for big models, when scaled, they spiral costs. That's yeah, absolutely true.
Yeah,
Really
absolutely.
too much to add to that. That's just true. And then he says, in my app, I integrate with Open Router so my users can pick mods that properly support their need at the most efficient cost. That's interesting. I
Yeah,
think that's actually a good idea.
I think that so Open Router is one of the tools you can use to do that. It's a good pattern to follow. If you're just asking a quick question, you don't need a Opus level model to answer that question. I think some of the problem is on determining when to route, and when you take that determination outside of the user, they can get frustrated because they wanted a if you ask a question that you feel like is like medium hard and you just get a haiku answer back, you're like, "Oh, well," it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. So, if you allow the users to do it, great. If you have an intelligent routing mechanism, great. But when you're paying $200 a month and you get routed to something that's yeah, it's not great.
I agree 100%. Let the users have control over that. And then he says, do you think it's actually a limit through the training of the model or more likely through instruction of the pipeline? I remember what that was in regards to.
I think that was in regards to the Mythos Opus stuff. And honestly, it could be either one. Anthropic is pretty tight-lipped about their training pipeline. So it the limitations we're seeing, it could be either one. I definitely did read it was at the model layer some, but what we saw with the Claude code leaks, the harnesses Anthropic does and has is doing a lot of heavy lifting. So it absolutely could also be part of the instruction in the pipeline or the harness as well.
And then I think this is also, again, in regards to them possibly routing down to a lower model in terms of that being hallucinated when it said it was Sonnet when the person asked if
Mhm.
it's the next best thing. I honestly, I think I agree with that as well. It sounds like hallucination to me. Let's see, Linda, which AI tool do you recommend for writing software, specifically app software? Chris?
Yeah, that's Claude Code or Codex from OpenAI. When it comes to actually writing code, those are the 2 that I would suggest anyone use. There's probably a little bit of difference in personality that you like or, like, your own workflow or how it's done, but those 2 are beasts. Either one of them, despite user sentiment, that will make you some solid software.
Cool. Yeah, as I'm reading through these chats, I just realized my laptop is overheating like
Oh.
crazy. Hopefully it stays on. All right, let's see. We'll go through as many as we can. Dustin says, "Is it worth the expensive models? Really give better models for business? If so, which ones?" I think that's like totally anecdotal. It really depends on what your use case is.
Yeah, totally.
Tough to say. I can say for me, and from what I heard from Chris, we pretty much have tried everything. So as long as you can try everything in terms of like money, probably should. You'll find that some tools are better for you than others, depending on what you're using them for. Let's see, Mohib. The amount of hallucinations I see AI making when dealing with writing on very technical topics is so much. Getting skeptic with each passing day.
Yeah.
I'm right there
No,
with you.
it's interesting. It's shockingly bad sometimes. I've had to recheck work just more than I'd feel comfortable. So,
Yeah.
I'm right there with him.
Yeah. And then to expand, he says even verifying with multiple chatbots is getting more confusing. Like every chatbot tells you something new. I definitely feel that as well. And I think also, like when I mentioned earlier about the Mona Lisa example, like I really think it depends on how many people are using it at that moment. Like their systems can get overloaded. Look at down detectors. I know that they don't have the best ratings on Google, but if you see a lot of people complaining, like maybe give it a few hours and then come back. I think maybe it would make sense that more hallucinations come along when their systems are overloaded because the model can't give you the right answer. But I think that's also a problem. If you can't give me the right answer, just say you can't. Don't
Yep,
hallucinate that.
that's the biggest thing. If it's something is wrong, tell me it's wrong. If you don't know, tell me you don't know, but that's not how the models are trained. So if
Yeah.
I think we've talked about that before, but it's basically like a multiple choice question during training, and follows the same rules. Them guessing will score higher on behavioral adaptation than them saying they don't know because they get 0 points for an "I don't know," and they get a 1 out of 4 chance of getting a point for a guess. So it just encourages hallucination from the start.
Right. Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah.
Linda, Chris said that he would answer this. Sam Illingworth was talking about having a private AI tool that's on his computer. That's a local model. Is that common? How do you go about formulating a personal AI tool in a closed system? Maybe that will help some flaws, decentralized system, and quit training models in a flawed manner. Chris.
Local models are great. They're getting stronger and more efficient. and I encourage anybody to explore this topic. You can go to Olama, for example, and download a model very safely, and it's just local to your machine. You can edit the system prompt. It's it's shockingly simple. The models themselves do take up a good chunk of memory, so you need at least like a decent computer to run one, but they're quantized, which means they just are made smaller. Like, they're still really efficient, but they're made just a little bit dumber to fit on consumer hardware. But unless you're, like, doing really advanced, like, coding or reasoning and research, local models will usually do everything you need it to do. Then you just plug it into a harness, maybe it's something like OpenClaw. You can experiment with that, but effectively, yeah, you can get these local models to do most things you need, and the subscription price is 0, so it's worth
Yeah,
investigating.
it's a big plus. I'm gonna do this for Chris. I don't think he wants to shout himself out, but he posted a video about how to do this, like, safely and the right way. So you should go to toxsec.com, TOXSEC, and check that out because he went A through Z on that. So if you're interested in local models, definitely subscribe to Chris and do it the right way.
That
Yeah,
was your idea, by the way.
yeah, whatever. What is an idea worth? Only as much as you can implement it, which I can't. So that's why we got Chris, guys. Let's see. Tokenization of text. This is Chad. Tokenization of text is why models have problem with the strawberry R test. I don't know what that is.
This is actually a very funny one. I thought about including it, but I thought maybe it was too dated. For the longest time, if you ask ChatGPT how many R's there are in strawberry, it would say 2. And obviously there are 3. And so there's the first one and then there's the double R, strawberry. And even now, sometimes these models will mess up on that question. And the reason why is because of tokenization. So again, when we look at the word strawberry, we can look at STR and we count the R and then we go and R. Okay, there's 3. But the model never sees a word. The model sees an integer ID. So when you ask a model to count the number of letters or do a word count or anything like that, character counts, it struggles with those tasks a lot. Not because the model's dumb, but because the information that it has that doesn't exist, right? So typically, what they do now is they'll actually spin up a Python program, and the Python program will count the R's for you, and then it will feed that back to the model, and the model will be like, "Oh, there's 3 R's." But the model itself, if it doesn't have access to any kind of advanced tooling like that, the model will see 2 R's because it will see straw, and this is a word that just for whatever reason is right on the edge case. And when it sees berry, it doesn't see 2 R's. So it sees 2 tokens, each one with an R, and it thinks there's 2 R's in strawberry. It's a very funny thing, but it's just one of those like little edge cases.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the reason why Mythos won't be released to the public. People
Can't
are gonna
count
be like,
strawberries.
yeah, they're gonna be like taking a picture of their like extra large pepperoni pizza and be like, count the pepperonis. And this just does, it's not, yeah, not very cost efficient. Let's see. Disparate elements makes a case for how the biases and such creep out into the model, doesn't it? Yeah, definitely some bias in these models for sure. Let's see. Chat again. We're starting to see models working around gaming
Yeah.
benchmarks too.
Great questions from Chad today.
Yeah.
Most recent benchmarks, Claude is often caught doing an internet search and trying to find the answers to the benchmarks and then using the answers it pulled from the internet instead of trying to calculate it itself. In addition to that, the way the companies are building and training the models, it's very specifically to pass a benchmark as benchmaxing. So the value in benchmarks is going down. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So humans have looks
Yeah.
maxing.
They got
AI have
benchmaxing.
bench maxing. And then again, disparate elements. Why does that sound like the prompt issued wasn't all that clear or so clear as to create this result? This is the issue of waiting to the end to do the chat.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what everything was in regards to, but we're trying to just get through the topics. But yeah, either way, appreciate the chat. Knight says AI is probabilistic and not deterministic. John Holman, gonna have to rewatch this one. It'll be on YouTube within the next few days. Let's see. Linda Most people do not know hallucinations exist and that AI fabricates or will avoid kill switches. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
I think that was to your point on the 95% of users, they just trust it. And the problem is it sounds so confident and authoritative, and it uses language that for our whole lives is traditionally associated with someone who's very knowledgeable. It's crazy that it's like the actual signals on for good information are there, but it's just completely made up. That's
yeah,
new. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think that's why these conversations are so important. Like for somebody that's trying to keep track of everything going on as much as I can, a lot of the videos that you see out there or articles or whatever it might be, it's not like a human conversation. It's more so like somebody reacting to something or the latest news. And I think that's why these conversations are so important because it just brings the human side to it and opens people's eyes to what's really going on.
Mhm.
What's hype, what's not, like what's actually happening in reality, cyber reality, I guess you could say. It's not really reality. So, Linda, I think this was in response to me saying my ideas don't matter. So she said, takes ideas, people and those that can take it and run with it need both. Yeah, actually, thank you. Appreciate it. Maybe that's why me, Chris, and I make a good team here. And then, and then we'll wrap it up here. So, John, so much of this misalignment stuff can be handled with custom prompts and solid scaffolding. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Agree.
I mean, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. So, yeah, we will wrap it up here. Go subscribe on YouTube if you haven't. It's Exploring ChatGPT live on YouTube. Toxic, TOXSEC on YouTube as well. And go enjoy your Saturdays. Go be with your family, with your friends, whoever it is, and have a great rest of your weekend. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks to Chris, as usual.